Hello, my name is Tom Stiles, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show number 302. Well, as I've been mentioning in a couple of my other videos recently, the shortwave listening has been really poor. Really poor. And on a couple of occasions, for a short period of time, it was very good. Like yesterday, I was talking to somebody, and they were mentioning that they were not able to receive the new WWV on 25 megahertz. And I thought, well, what the heck of it? This was in the afternoon. I'll just turn on and see if I can get it. And it was coming in clear as a bell, loud. And it was like, all of a sudden, that particular band was working. So anyway, I've been continuing to look for indications that would tell me if the bands are good internationally, or if it's just my location or what. And I've showed you a couple of websites that might help you figure that out too. Well, I was talking to a fellow YouTuber, and he was explaining to me some of these charts that appear on the internet that will give you an indication of theoretical band conditions. You know, what, based on certain parameters, what the band's conditions should be. And so I asked him to try to explain that to me, and he was nice enough to produce a video on his YouTube channel that would explain those charts to me, and said that I could provide that video to my subscribers to help them explain it, since I probably couldn't do a very good job. So anyway, let's go over to his website. And this is a newer website, YouTube channel specifically, that he has started. He had one for several years and finished kind of that project, shall I call it, and decided to start a brand new one. So he started his brand new one, and it's called 70 Freeze. I think that's taken after the nomenclature used by hams of 73s, meaning, good greetings and stuff like that. So anyway, down here, you see that he did this video for me and talks about the recent poor shortwave propagation and how to read some charts to get an idea if it's changed or if it's going to change or what the conditions are right now. So I'm going to, with his permission, I'm going to show you that video next. Now, if you haven't subscribed to his YouTube channel, you should do that. He has some great videos, and you can also subscribe to his older YouTube channel, which I've mentioned in the past, which he is no longer updating, but all the videos are still there and they're very appropriate. And that is called My Ham Shack. So here goes, here goes the video that he has produced for me.
Tom Hamred88 asked me to do a video explanation of these type of applets that you see on propagation websites. And this is on my website. I put a collection of a few popular little applets on there. There are, like I said, many of these applets kicking around. Some of them give too much information and can be quite confusing, especially for people that don't have a very big or very deep understanding of propagation. Plus, I like these because they're so simple. They tell you exactly what you need to know in a very short amount of time. You can read and look at the more involved applets and read through the text and things like that, and you will get a lot from those explanations. But overall, this simple one page here tells you everything that many other pages would tell. So I like this because it very simply and within a matter of seconds tells you what the current conditions are. At the middle of the page you can see this purpley blue box. By the way, these applets are from 3 different sources, and they're generally calculated out in different ways slightly, so they don't always update exactly at the same time. Sometimes there's a bit of a conflict of their displays. things like that. So I take the average over everything that is being said there on this page, and that should be averagely accurate. So we'll just look at this purpley blue box here for the moment, and we can forget about the numbers because the numbers aren't really so important. We can look at the forecast here and it says stable. Well, that's good, but we'll have to check the other indicators to see if this is an accurate forecast. The conditions, the current conditions, are not too bad. It says normal up until 10 megahertz, and then between 10 and 20 is good, and then between 20 and 30 is good. Basically, this means it doesn't necessarily mean good propagation, it just means stable band conditions. The one on the right there, we have like this traffic light symbol. It can be red, orange, or green. Green is, of course, good, and at the moment we're in green, and green is quite good, so the noise levels are relatively quiet at this time. At the bottom of the page we have a number of different dials, and again these are showing different things, and more or less they are agreeing with the other two applets. As long as we have our needles more or less in the green, they're not too bad. We can see the one on the right there is at the moment a little bit into the red, so that's a bit of a worry, a little bit of low signals I'd be expecting coming up to the northern hemisphere. Overall though, looking at these dials, I would say, based upon this speed indicator, I would say a little bit noisy and a little bit weak signals at this time. But apart from that, relatively stable conditions. This applet on my webpage is updated all the time, so it's automatically done every few seconds. The page will refresh. So come past and have a look at the applets, and they will be able to tell you if it's worthwhile even turning on the radio or not. When we look at some of the propagation websites, we see things like flares, the words flares, and CME, coronal mass ejections, and things like that. So for a few seconds I'll just run through a few of what these words mean. Coronal mass ejections are bad. A CME is when the flare has, you could say, farted out huge amounts of solar mass, which is mostly electrons and protons, from the sun's surface, and this is being ejected from the sun and probably, if we're unlucky, heading in Earth's direction. CMEs cause signal dropouts and probably high received noise levels. Flares, solar flares, can be good and they can be bad. A small solar flare can excite the upper layer of the ionosphere, and that is good for DX. Large flares are so strong that they excite all the layers of the ionosphere, including the lowest D layer, which is the one closest to the Earth, and that prevents our signals from reaching the higher layers, so that means poor DX. Sunspots generally are good. Now the problem is that in times of high sunspot activity, the likelihood of flares and CMEs are also higher. That means that in this part of the solar cycle, when good HF signal propagation can occur, there's also the greater chance of noise or signal dropouts occurring as well. I personally prefer the lower part of the sunspot cycle because it's much more predictable, and while the signals are lower in strength and you have to use lower frequencies a bit more often, the noise too is also less. To get good signals at that time, you just need to have a better antenna and radio. So the applets, the current conditions that the applets are telling us, it says things, they're not great, but not too bad. Well, the applets aren't telling you that we are in a bit of a recovery stage. A few days ago there was some solar flares, and we are slowly recovering from these now. But how come some people are already picking up shortwave radio stations and some people are still not hearing anything? While operator technique might be involved, perhaps the people that aren't hearing anything are just listening at the wrong time. Another, probably the biggest reason, is the performance of their radio system. Because the signals transmitted by shortwave radio stations are quite powerful, many shortwave listeners can get by with, how can we say, minimal radio setups. And that's fine under normal conditions. but at times when there's poor conditions and the shortwave stations aren't propagating very well, the people with minimal radios suffer the greatest. So if we start off with this minimal radio setup, at times when there's low propagation, there may seem like no propagation. While it's impossible for us to make propagation when there is none, those that have more advanced Radio Shacks will be hearing things, while others are hearing nothing at all. But for shortwave listeners, over the last week there has been some problems, but it's clearing up now, and if there are no new solar events, everything should be back to normal by this coming weekend. See you later. Bye bye.